Michele Weir, thank you for joining me today and welcome to the Singing Teachers Talk podcast.
Thank you, Alexa. I'm so happy to be with you today and honored to be a guest on your podcast.
Considering your backstory, how have you arrived at where you are today and why jazz in particular?
Not to give you too long a story, but it did start for me back when I was a teenager. I grew up in California, in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I was a lover of folk music, rock music. I was getting into some R&B music and so on. And I loved a singer named Joni Mitchell. And I just had all her albums at the time and sang along with them and played my guitar and sang Joni songs and so on. And then she recorded a couple of jazz songs. One was called Twisted and one was called Centerpiece. And I always say that was my gateway drug into jazz. It just lit me up. I loved it. It was so interesting to me, so bluesy, so earthy, so creative and kind of stylized, that I just started going that direction. And after that, I never went back. I mean, I still love many different styles of music, but I spent a long life in jazz just based on that one sort of gateway artist.
Where does jazz originate from and what historical context of jazz is helpful for us as teachers and for singers to know?
Well, jazz has had, a good history that's been over a century now. I'm not really an historian. I'm not an expert, but I know, I think I know the basics. It's a little bit like classical music history where there were different, moments where there was the Renaissance and then the classical and then the Romantic period and so on. We have the same thing in jazz, and it started around the early 20th century, so early 1900s in New Orleans, which was what they called a melting pot of music. It was a combination of the slave trade of bringing African American people from Africa and the European musics with bands and so on that were sort of mixed together, and that started a new type of music that was born in kind of soulful creativity mixed with instrumental music, mixed with vocal soloists, and it sort of grew from there. Think of artists like Louis Armstrong, who was a trumpet player and a singer back then. Then it went through a new episode in the 30s where it became dance music, the big band era of, Benny Goodman, maybe you've heard of, and Count Basie band and so on. Then it went to bebop, which was artists like Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie. That's where we started to get into the parent style of modern jazz. And that's characterized by those fast, intricate lines. That's where that was born, and that was in the 1940s and 50s. Then it changed courses. It went to cool jazz with an artist named Miles Davis, et cetera, et cetera. So, there's been a lot of different sort of styles of jazz over the decades of the last century. And I think that probably for anybody that's a jazz teacher, they're probably a jazz teacher because they're attracted to one of those musics, probably more contemporary jazz singing, or maybe singing from the 40s, 50s, 60s from Ella Fitzgerald, the famous singers like Nat King Cole and so on. Regarding singers and singing specifically, something important to note is that a large body of the songs that we do are from what we call the jazz standard repertoire. And that is music that was from the 1920s, 1930s up to show tunes. Many Broadway tunes became jazz standards, of course. And so on. And those are still done today. I mean, they're so prevalent that a jazz teacher would need to be familiar with that repertoire. A jazz teacher would want to be familiar with some of the classic artists, the Ella Fitzgeralds, the Nat King Coles, and Sarah Vaughan, Carmen McRae, Nancy Wilson, Mel Tormé. There's a lot of sort of classic jazz singers that one should be familiar with. And the cool thing is, they're all really, really different. Like, it's not just one sound, it's not just one style. It's a very individualized type of expression, musical expression. And that's really the sort of glowing, notable aspect about jazz singing, is that no two jazz singers are alike. And that's what we want, is that we want people to develop their own unique style. And to do that, we listen to a lot of different people, different artists, and we borrow from them. And we soak in what they do, and we think about, what is it that's so enticing about this? What's so thrilling about it? What moves me in this? And then little by little, we pick up the stylistic flavors and so on from those singers. There's a whole new world of more contemporary singers also that are paving new roads. And I would say, as jazz singing, as more and more really young people are jazz singing, there's a little higher level of musicianship that's involved. So there's a high percentage of them that are songwriters or doing interesting musical combinations. Like, there's a singer named Gretchen Parlato who is using African rhythmic traditions and integrating it with her singing and her choice of songs and the music that she does and so on. There's a lot of new cool stuff going on. So it's not all Ella Fitzgerald era. There's some cutting edge stuff also.
So what are the characteristics of jazz then, and why are students attracted to it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I don't always know why students are attracted to it, actually. I know why I was attracted to it, but I'm not sure all the different reasons for different people. I think sometimes people are attracted to scat singing, which is really weird because, many people just don't like scat singing at all. And it's actually can be more fun to do than to listen to. Yet I've traveled the world teaching for my whole career. And there's people all over the world that just want to know, how do I scat sing? How do I scat sing? What do I need to do? I want to get better and I don't know how to get better. So it's an interesting thing. I think that some people have just heard, like I did, an artist that just moved them. I mean, that's what music is all about, right? It's just connecting on an emotional level and hearing something that resonates to you and reaches your heart. And that's a really, really big aspect of jazz. It just comes in different packages. It's not always about a pretty voice. It's not about a well-trained, perfectly executed voice necessarily. It reminds me of some artists from a long time ago, like Bob Dylan or Tom Waits, or people like that maybe have this kind of a sound in their voice, yet they were a super, super, super popular artist. There's something in it that people love. So I think some people are attracted to the creativity involved in jazz because it is, by definition, a creative art form. We take a song and it's a little bit like a Picasso painting. There's a picture of someone's face, right? Normal face, but Picasso will put the eyeball up here and then mouth is down here and the nose is crooked this way. But then Kandinsky would do it a different way and Rembrandt would do it a different way. And they're all good. And you can't say their technique is bad. It's just what it is. And the similar kind of thing happens in jazz. We take a song and we interpret. There may be minor differences in the interpretation, but there will be some. The tone quality can be different. The rhythmic feel can be different. The context can be different. We can take a song that's normally a heartfelt ballad and turn it into an upswing tune, something more exciting if the lyrics work in that context. Or we could turn it into a Brazilian bossa nova. et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of freedom, and it's exciting, and it's really, really fun. And it's fun when people begin to trust that I can be myself and find a creative way to interpret this lyric, because that's the one sort of non-changing factor, is the lyric. But we set the lyric in different, let's call it colors, different contexts, and that's part of the fun and the beauty of jazz.
The great thing about functional voice training is that it's applicable regardless of style. But how much vocal technique do you actually look at in a jazz vocal lesson? And what technique would you be looking at there being in order to access a jazz voice that is stylistically authentic?
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit like saying to Picasso, did you practice with watercolors as part of your background? Well, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Does he need it to do what he does? Well, not necessarily does Bob Dylan. And you're young, you probably don't even know who Bob Dylan is. Perhaps you do.
I do know. Only one or two songs, but yeah.
Only one or two, because I hate listening to him, actually, but many people do love him for what he does. People come to me. I'm not a technique teacher. Like I mean, I am, but I'm not. I mean, I'm on an as needed basis, basically, and it's usually needed to some extent, but not in the same kind of depth as we would do in some other styles. For us, we address, at least for myself, I will address technique when it's needed. If somebody can't sing with, long notes on, well-shaped and resonant vowels, it's a problem, because they don't have control. They can't do what they probably want to do. If I hear them trying to do something and they're tight, or their chin is way out, or they're not using their air, or whatever it is, or their vowel shapes are, they just don't know how to shape the vowel and keep resonance and so on, then yes, I will work on technique. And many times we'll do warm-ups just to reinforce. I call them warm-ups, but it's, specific exercises for helping problems, basically. But other than that, there's so many other things we do in lessons too. So I couldn't say that there's like one type of technique, or that most jazz teachers use. I would say that technique is a good technique is very beneficial and useful for all singers, but in this case, it's not the primary thing. It's part of the big picture and what the singer is interested to accomplish.
So if you were to write a checklist, then what's going to be on that list in terms of characteristics? How do we know we're listening to jazz?
That's a good question. How do we know when we're hearing jazz? I would say the first thing is the styles that you hear. So if we hear swing is a rhythmic style, so comparing it to pop and rock, because probably a lot of your listeners, or might be oriented that direction. If we hear a okay, that's like an old style 1960s or 70s, this heavy rock beat. If we hear a maybe we're hearing in a funky shuffle kind of groove. We have a set of grooves that we use in jazz commonly. And so the first indicator that it's a jazz interpretation is the groove that we're hearing. And singers have got to learn how to sing rhythmically and feel the pocket. And that actually is a big part of it. They also have to learn to put their lyrics in rhythm in a way that they sound conversational, which is so much easier said than done, especially in swing. Swing is ba-doo, da-doo, da-doo, da-doo. It's based on triplet, 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 triplet. And I always say there's a river of triplets going on underneath everything you do in swing. is bass, down triple, le triple, le triple, le triple. So we have to learn to feel that, and it can be so hard for a lot of people if they haven't grown up hearing it. So anyway, that's one of the recognizable styles. I would say also when we hear a recorded artist or performance where someone is being improvisational with a melody, that's another telltale sign that it's jazz, a jazz interpretation, because we have these jazz standard songs that tend to be done commonly. So many times we hear a song that we've heard before, Lullaby of Birdland, or, Georgia on My Mind, or whatever. There's The Autumn Leaves. I mean, these are some of the superstar songs that have been done 100 million times. And when we hear that, but then we hear someone interpret it a little differently by changing the phrasing, which is a big deal in jazz. Phrasing is a big deal. I think maybe it's a bigger deal in jazz than it is in other styles, because it's one of our creative tools. The way we start a phrase late, or the way we spill into a phrase and then we keep going and actually end it ahead of time. And then we leave space at the end. Our use of space is very, very analogous to a poet who's reading a poem creatively. They may go ahead, they may lump together a few sentences, putting them back to each other and allowing them to speed ahead, but then leaving it it's really fun. It's really fun of the creative part of the process, putting those lyrics into an interesting phrasing context. So that's one of the creative aspects of it. Feeling rhythm important, creative phrasing important, and very jazz specific is a very jazz specific thing. Also, changing the notes. The notes of the song go ooh, ooh, ooh. We change the notes to express the lyrics. It's all about expressing the lyrics, and ultimately it's about expressing the emotion behind the lyrics, right? Because the lyrics could be saying one thing. The lyrics might be saying, I love you, but the subtext is, I love you, but I'm leaving you. I can't be with you, So, then we say, I love you, but we say it in a certain way. And so we may choose notes that help me describe that subtext and the emotion of subtext. We choose rhythms, we choose phrasing based on that. If it's a song that is really in rhythm, because we do have ballads, of course, also, then we choose our rhythms accordingly too. And we also use articulation to a great degree. And when I say articulation, I'm just meaning accents and what we call in jazz ghost notes, especially in scatting. And we could talk more about scatting, and it's a separate topic. But when we dig into a line like this, and we say, I don't know, we've got a line that says, I love you, but I'm gonna have to leave you. The more we dig in to certain word stresses, the more it says something's important here. Like, I want you to hear this. Either you're angry, or you're excited, or you're upset, but it says that something important is going on. And conversely, if we don't have those heavy word stresses, then we relax the sound. And the mood is, I'm content, I'm happy, maybe I'm in love, or maybe I wish I was in love, but we have a gentle feeling. And so it all comes down to word painting, word painting, and it's, I think you might feel my excitement about it, because it's a lot of fun to sing a song and word paint and make it your own, and take the listener on an emotional journey.
Definitely, yeah. Can you help us to understand how we might be able to get into swing feel then? How do you help a student to really nail that?
Oddly, I do find a percentage of my students just have rhythm challenges in general. Like they kind of have trouble feeling steady beat, regularly and doing another activity while they're feeling steady beat. Because steady beat has to be really internalized, right? So we do exercises and I have them physicalize things a lot. So we will walk in tempo, step, 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 and then we have a conversation. We're always looking for pulse and then the subdivision of the pulse. So pulse, 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 pulse is analogous to quarter note, quarter note, quarter note, quarter note. And the subdivision is the eighth note, which is where swing feel resides. One quarter note feels like triplets, triplet, 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 but we don't do the middle note. We go triplet, 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 triplet. So it's long, short, long, short, long, short, long, short. That's the mechanics of swing feel. Feeling of pulse, pulse, pulse with a secondary feeling of triplet, triplet, triplet. And I always tell people it's like a rolling wave, a rolling wave. It's legato. So we keep our air moving through it. So, then that has to become totally autopilot, right? So to make that happen, first of all, we listen to artists in swing feel, and maybe we sing along with them. I will assign an 8-bar section or a 16-bar section to a recording to sing along with and match exactly, trying to really exactly fall in line with how that singer interpreted the song. And then we step, step, step in tempo while we're standing up. And maybe we move our hand like that to get the rolling wave feeling. And then we talk. Like I'll say a sentence, I'll have them repeat it back to me. Like, it's a beautiful day. 2, 3, 4, it's a beautiful day. And we might discuss some subtleties about it, and that is that we have the word stress areas. It's is a word stress syllable. Bu is another one. Day. So it's bu day. 2, 3, 4. It's a bu day. And the other notes glide. It's a beautiful day. It's so I'm, maybe just I physicalize it. We conduct it sometimes. We try to step in tempo while we do a lot of work, so that becomes second nature. So now I'm stepping in tempo. I should be able to do anything, speak freely, but step in tempo. Talk in rhythm, but step in tempo. Interpret my song in rhythm, but step in tempo, so that it becomes sort of like somewhere in the back of your awareness, not your primary awareness.
And who would be a good example for hearing that swing feel then?
Yeah. Well, there's so many, really, so many great people. Ella, everyone knows Ella Fitzgerald, knows of her and loves her for good reason. So she was in it. She was swinging. All the early greats. I think Nat King Cole was wonderful at just being relatively simple, but singing with beautiful joy, a lot of fluidity vocally, and really swinging when he was doing swing tunes. I was always a fan of Nancy Wilson. She's just awesomely creative, and she can do anything with her voice. She can be warm and fuzzy. She can be bright and brassy. She can be sad and bigger, warmer voice. She can sing anything in rhythm. She just cuts right to the heart when she sings, and when she's swinging, she's swinging. Kind of like you get to know what the mood is that you want at the moment, and then you dive 120% into it. So let's see. Mel Tormé was an early jazz singer that was swinging, I think. Really swinging. But the classics, yeah, Ella, Carmen, McRae, Sarah Vaughan are always good to go to.
And you mentioned things like triplets and quarter notes and eighth notes and tempo, and your teaching often includes learning jazz piano basics too. So how does this help support the singer in embodying and understanding the style more?
You're right. We do sometimes work on piano, and we work on lead sheet writing. So we write our own charts in our key and so on, because it's sort of normal. It's ideal for and commonplace for the contemporary vocal jazz musician to not be a singer per se, but be a musician. And it's also one of the main things that people come to me for is because I say that I speak singer and I speak musician. I speak both the languages because I'm a piano player and I arrange for vocal groups and orchestra and so on. So it's comfortable to be able to speak the language and know what the terms mean and say, hey, let's do Autumn Leaves in starting on F minor, and we'll do it medium swing. After the head, I'll scat half a chorus, then you come back in at the bridge and we'll do a tag at the end. All of those terms are can be new for a lot of people. And everything about talking with the band and working with the band, telegraphing things on stage, nonverbal communication, et cetera, are things that drive singers crazy, jazz singers crazy, because they don't know it. They're not always comfortable. They're like, I want to learn, I want to be in the club. I want to know what all those things mean. I want to be a leader if it's my gig. I want to be leader of the band. So I want to be able to speak to them in the language that they understand and so on. So piano is like a gateway to understanding some of the things about jazz that players talk about, like intros and endings, to know what a dominant 7 chord is, to know what a minor 7 flat 5 chord is like so comforting to a lot of our jazz singers, because they become functional. They can really function in a jazz context. Plus, it's really easy then. It's only a small stepping stone to go from knowing about chord types to being able to write their own chart and not have to hire somebody to do it. Has skills to know where to locate those jazz standard songs, and get it to learn what key it's in, and to be able to transpose it into their key, know what key they want, and et cetera. Those are very common skills that my singers want to know. And then some people want to learn how to accompany themselves too, or someone else, or teach. Some people want to learn to teach, so they come and we do little basics at the piano so they get functional jazz piano skills. And it's not hard for people that already play piano a little bit, classical piano or whatever. It's just a small step to begin to learn how to play jazz chords, and it's very helpful.
Scatting. What is scatting and how do you help a singer to do it successfully?
Well, it's a big topic. And as I started with early on, I said, scatting can be more fun to do than to listen to. Honestly, I don't go out of my way to turn on people recordings where people are scatting necessarily, but I appreciate it when it's done well. First of all, let's set the stage for it. Scatting is sort of a more organic version of what instrumental jazz people do when they improvise. They're taking a set of chord changes, like based on a song, like the Autumn Leaves, which I keep mentioning because it's such a super, super common standard. And they're improvising based on the chord changes. They're outlining notes that are within the chord, and they're outlining scales that work in the chord, and basically rewriting the song and making their own new song melody, on the song. And that's what scatting is too, the same thing, making up their own melodies over a given chord progression, but they have syllables to make up also. And that's one of the most common questions I get is, what syllables do I use? you know, ba-doo ba, boo-ba-doo ba. You know, how do I know what syllables to use? I did create an iOS app for it. I'm not trying to plug this app because it's actually, you know,
I know,
we don't,
plug away.
right? Okay. Well, it's called ScatAbility.
Amazing.
And I think this is the only iOS, I think it's the only scatting app there is actually. But it only has a certain amount of product. We sort of slowed down on it some years ago, but we hopefully will add more in the future. But there are three kind of products that happen in here just briefly. First of all, there's an etude. This is an awesome singer here, Rosanna Eckert. An etude is an actual scat solo based on a song. So this scat solo, I'll just play a little teeny bit. It's based on When I Fall in Love. So you can hear a bit of it. Okay, so you know, you practice it like that. You can stop it, you can loop. Yeah, so you could take a section, you know, and just loop it. So this is call and response. You listen and you sing. Anyway, and some of those are kind of difficult. And then there's exercises where you just listen and start singing along as soon as you learn the repetitive exercise. And then it goes through a couple of keys, etc. And then the real fun part is this. You play it, then you can mute her, and now it's a backing track.
Ah, cool.
Really fun. And then you can also record over the backing track. Super fun, I think. So, and it's helpful. Yeah, so we do the same things in our lessons, the same types of things. We do, especially exercises. We might do syllables only at first. We try to get pairs of syllables, ba-doo, 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 ba, ooh, ooh, or dee, ba, dee, ba, dee, ba, because we want to have a lot of eighth notes. Doo, ba, doo, ba, doo, boo, boo, ba, doo, ba, doo, ba, doo, 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 ba, 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 doo, ba, boo, ba, da. If somebody plays piano, I will actually have them play the notes like I'm doing and sing at the same time. Yeah, so we'll do like some call and response. I'll say ba-doo, 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 ba. They'll repeat. And then we'll do exercises in different keys. And just like this, or an etude. I have etudes written up that I give to people that are recorded. And then they just sing it and learn it by rote, you know, and it's a lot like learning a language. You know, we learn how to say, you know, ¿Dónde está el baño? ¿Dónde está el baño? ¿Dónde está? We have to feel it in the way the vowels and consonants are, because it's basically a new language. And we have to use the authentic accent of that language, which in this case is actually American English. We have for example, if we have a hard T, water, as in, you know, proper British English, perhaps.
Well, it depends where you come from. Some people might say water.
Yeah, right. True. So yeah, it depends on that. So but even that, then you would probably need to adjust to Americanize it so it sounds like a regular American accent, because the syllables are based on that. Ba-doo, ba, 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 ba-doo, ba-doo, doo, doo, ba. We have ghost notes, which are the N sounds. They're voiced consonants that we throw in there sometimes for articulation. So we'll have articulated notes, ba, 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 and we'll have ghost notes that are sort of just pitch, but no vowel. N, o, ba doodle, doodle loo, ba doodle loo, ba doodle loo, ba doodle loo, ba doodle loo, ba. And all of those are little flavors of rhythm, and they're exactly analogous to instrumentalists, what instrumentalists do.
So how does somebody get good at that in such a way that they could just get up on the mic and improvise?
You know, first of all, everyone's universally nervous about it at first, because it's like anything. If you don't know how to do it, you're afraid of looking bad and sounding bad. First of all, we get some experience under our belt where they feel like, okay, I think I could use this or some other backing track and improvise and make up a little song melody. And by the way, I might use repetition just like in regular songs, like you know, the key aspect of that is it's one little fragment that is repeated and then expanded or varied. And that's basically how we approach scatting too. We make an idea clear as a bell, and we use it as our basis, and we repeat it, expand it. Then we go on to a new idea, repeat it, expand it. And so in that, there is some level of structure so people can begin to feel comfortable. Like, oh, okay, I see, I make an idea, then I build a little story out of it, etc. So, once people start to get that feeling of, okay, I think I can do this. Actually, one other level we haven't talked about it is hearing the chord progression. Because, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on there. So that's where the backing tracks come in very helpful. Simply through repetition, some people with a good natural ear can begin to do notes that fit on the chord changes. And otherwise, we have specific exercises we can do, especially hearing the roots of the chords and singing on the bass note of every chord. That really helps a singer get oriented toward hearing the context of the chord progression. After all that, the real best stepping stone to being confident enough to perform scatting is to have jam sessions. I love putting student singers together, if possible, and having them use a backing track, and they sing the melody to the tune. They may take turns. One person sings the first 8 bars, somebody sings the next 8 bars, etc. Then one person scats for a whole chorus, which means one time through the song. The next person scats for a chorus, one time through the song. Then maybe they trade 4-bar phrases, they sing the melody again. And that process is super, super helpful. When I go out in the world and I ask students when I do workshops, wherever I am, and I ask them, how often do you scat and improvise with a backing track? Many times they say, oh, never, we just do the exercises. That is woefully incomplete practice then, because I'm always telling people, practice whatever you're practicing, syllables, rhythm, melody, hearing the changes, and then go use it. It's like learn the mechanics of how to ride the bicycle, then ride the bicycle. It's important to do that.
Jazz always gives me a hankering for either a glass of champagne or a cocktail. The cup of tea is not doing the trick for me right now, but yeah, it just has that vibe for me.
I hear what you're saying. I know what you mean. It's often commercially portrayed as the beautiful woman with an evening gown on, next to the piano kind of thing, right? And it has, I always was attracted to that sophistication also, actually. not exactly that image, but I was attracted to that. I kind of, this is not true or false. I'm just saying I was attracted to the idea that you've got to be kind of sophisticated musically to do it and do it well. That it's more than just having a natural gift of a pretty voice and being able to open your mouth and sing. You have to hear the changes, you have to understand styles, you have to be creative and be confident to change, be living in a creative framework at all times when you're scatting, or when you're singing jazz at all, entirely. And that was always very attractive to me too. So
I just pop on YouTube and type in positive jazz, and it's kind of, I don't know the style enough to know really what it is I'm listening to, but it's very enjoyable and relaxing.
oh, that's nice. That's good to hear. Yeah, sometimes some kinds of jazz are kind of like not really real jazz. I'm not speaking of anything you're listening to, but just be aware that sometimes what we used to call fusion music back in the last century, is kind of a hybrid of jazz and rock. And it's a little bit of an easy to listen to version of jazz. Some people probably are attracted to that because it's not too deeply jazzy, but it's, but yeah, also just true jazz can be beautiful and relaxing. It so depends on the artist and the way they're choosing to interpret the music at that time.
Mm. So, what is the role of emotion and storytelling in jazz then?
Yeah, it's so important. It's so, personally, I feel like in all music, whether it be classical, Luciano Pavarotti, somebody, or musical theater, country music, pop music, R&B music styles. To me, it's all about communicating emotion. So in a sense, yes, we could say it's about the lyrics, but really the lyrics are a way of getting at the emotion. And I'm always, when I'm coaching singers on songs with lyrics, I'm always saying, yeah, the lyrics are one thing, but what's the emotion behind the lyric? Can it choose these different interpretations of the lyrics? There's different colors of sad. Well, how sad are you? Are you like, suicidal, or are you, are you like a little bit blue, or are you so upset, or are you angry sad, or are you, I feel I'm going to give up now because I just don't have the heart because I'm so sad. There's so many different ways. And so we can take the lyric and paint it different colors. And I do think in the end, that's what we're going for, is to help the audience feel something. That's what it's all about. I think that's true for all music, though, whether it's, who knows, just anybody, any artist, any genre. I think it's about that, to bring the listener on a journey, allow them, entice them to trust you, to listen to you, and to allow you to help them feel something. And then when you do that, you're a great musician. That's why Bob Dylan is okay being Bob Dylan, and Billie Holiday, the jazz singer who doesn't really have a beautiful singing voice, but people loved her. She feels something. So, yeah.
What would you say is a big misconception about jazz?
I think sometimes people that haven't really delved very deeply into jazz and maybe don't know too much about it, I would say they might think it's light and frivolous. They might think, oh, it's just fun music. Ba-doo, 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 ba, da, ba, da, or, especially scatting, because it does sound terrible if someone doesn't have some expertise, it can sound pretty silly with those syllables, But I think sometimes people that don't know much about it just think it's frivolous, and they don't realize the depth of soulful communication that can be involved in jazz, the depth of the layers of musicality of great jazz singers, how well their ear is tuned to hearing the way complex chord changes happen, and to being not only vocally capable to use their voice to be spot on. A lot of jazz singers really are good technicians. I mean, listen to Ella. She's singing in tune in all parts of her range at any tempo, in any style, and making you feel like you're 6 years old again, rolling through a joyful field or something. You know, she makes you feel good while she's doing it. And so I think some people just don't realize that the intelligence, the musical intelligence really that can be involved in jazz. By the same token, I should say, I think a lot of jazz singers have great, great, great success with zero study and zero technique practice and zero cognitive understanding. You know, they're just, they've heard it. Maybe they grew up with it. Maybe their parents listened and they're kind of a natural. I'm sure the same kind of thing is similar with pop, you know, styles and stuff too. You may want to refine some technique for sure, but you know, they already from the starting gate, they're kind of a natural. We have that in jazz also.
What does it take to be a confident voice teacher in this particular style?
Like anything, you have to feel like you understand the style. First of all, you know what the aesthetic is. What is the aesthetic all about? I mean, maybe some people would be a little more oriented toward the performance side of jazz, but I'm not. To me, the performance is important, and we practice a lot of times with microphone in the room, especially when a concert's coming up or if a recording is coming up. We practice on my Pro Tools setting, you know, in my back room. So we practice singing it, you know, into Pro Tools, you know, and making recordings, demo recordings or CD recordings, you know, and practice getting, you know, using the headphones and all that. So, I mean, I guess you can't really teach anything you don't know about. So you have to learn and become confident in the styles and understand what's important about it and methods to help people. I think in the realm of teaching music, no matter what the teaching is, whether it's teaching someone to play guitar or teaching someone, you know, piano or singing or whatever, there are people that don't really know how to get them there. And it's maybe because they haven't thought it through enough and help them understand the types of challenges individuals can have. For example, I talked about some people have challenges with rhythm, and some people have challenges. They might be good with rhythm as a thing, but they can't sing with it. Like they go to sing and it's hard for them to like do two things at the same time, feel the rhythm while they're also singing in rhythm. And so, you know, finding strategies is such a big thing. I've just done it so many years. I think I've found a few strategies that seem to be helpful, you know, but I would encourage any teacher to just scheme on what can I do here? You know, first, you know, all teaching is about diagnosis, what's going on here and what needs to happen to help this person, and strategy for how to help them. I think none of us have a very good excuse now to not go learn how to do whatever we want to learn how to do, because we have the internet and now we have AI also. So right, we can learn anything, right? So we should go do our homework and just watch other people doing YouTubes and stuff and figure out, you know, what are people talking about? How are they teaching? What do I think is important? What's my particular style? What am I good at doing with a student? How do I best relate with different student personalities to get them helping them and to feel like they're on a path they know what the path is, and they do feel better after they walk that path, and then take them to the next level after that.
Your online school, MusicHabit, is a great resource. What other materials would you recommend us checking out to learn more about performing jazz?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning MusicHabit. I think ScatAbility for the scatting, of course, also the app. There are a few pedagogues that have done some really, really good stuff and have books and CDs for practice along with the books. Judy Neimack is one person. I think it's Neimack, Judy Neimack. I'm sure they're on Amazon, and CDs come with the books, as I say. She lives, I think, in Europe right now. I think she's in Germany, but she teaches regularly in Spain and stuff also. And so she's European, but she's American born, but she lives in Europe. Bob Stoloff has got some good books. Also, a lot of them are very oriented toward rhythm and syllables and scatting. As a matter of fact, I think all his materials have to do with scatting, and they have recordings that go along with them too. And then Darman Meter is a singer with a group called New York Voices, and he's like one of our greatest living scat singers. He's an awesome person, and that I love that group, New York Voices. And he has a book called I Forgot. It's not called I Forgot.
It's okay.
I forgot, but it's easy to find if you can look up the name Darman, Darmon, Meter, Meader. You'll find it easily. Go to his website, probably is the best way to go, darmanmeter.com. Myself and others do workshops, and those I think can be really, really helpful. It's a shot in the arm of learning how to either teach and or do, jazz singing.
Michele, it's been so great chatting with you. Where can listeners find out more about you and get in touch?
Oh, thank you, Alexa. So I have a website, an old website. I'm going to redo it, I think, here pretty soon. But that's micheleweir.com. Then Michele has one L, MicheleWeir. But I'm moving most everything over to the MusicHabit umbrella. So we do have a few classes up there now. There are classes you can buy. And then I'm putting all my workshops there shortly also. I've started to move that way, but I'm going to start doing workshops regularly, 1 or 2 a month. So that you can go look at musichabit.com. I should say there's a free area there too called the practice room, where there are free materials for practicing and learning about stuff. So I'll be adding to that more all the time also.
Great. Michele, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. So nice to meet you and nice to speak with you, and wishing you the luck with the best organization.